Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first installment of the F Word Stories About Failure with the Kataly Foundation. I'm Zaineb Mohammed. I'm the Communications Director at Kataly. Kababi and Amber, do you each want to introduce yourselves?
I'm
Sure.
sure. I'm cbabi, a painter, illustrator, muralist based in St. Louis, Missouri.
And I am Amber howlett-bayoc, and my company represents Kababi and Kababi-Bayoc Originals.
Thank you so much. So, today I'm going to be sharing my failure story, and Kababi and Amber have generously agreed to be part of that conversation with me. So here goes. So in September 2025, Kataly published a grant announcement about our Solidarity and Resilience Fund, which is an initiative to strengthen grantee resilience and support movement infrastructure. So as I was getting ready to publish the grant announcement, I was looking for a photo to accompany it. In May 2025, the Kataly team took a trip to Montgomery and Selma, Alabama, as part of a political education journey. And I was looking through photos from that trip and I saw a photo of this beautiful mural. It said "Good Trouble" and it included a quote from MLK's letter from a Birmingham jail. And I thought, oh, this has kind of like a natural connection to what this fund is doing. So I included the photo in the grant announcement. I credited our photographer and I hit publish. Come Monday morning, I see an email in my inbox from Amber about our use of the image. So this mural was created by Kababi. It was part of several mural installations that happened through Kababi and Amber's partnership with Foot Soldiers Park in Selma, Alabama. Um, in the moment when I saw your email, Amber, like the realization kind of hit me like, oh, I hadn't tried to identify the artist who created this mural. Then obviously had not reached out to the artist before using the image. And, the email that you sent us was written in a really generous spirit. You expressed surprise that we had not reached out to you, that we had not credited or acknowledged Kababi's work. And you also noted that we should have had a licensing agreement in place in order to use this image in our grant announcement. Um, and you asked to chat with us about corrective measures. Another part of your email was naming that the path of being a Black artist has not been easy. And you named that, you both ex exercise a lot of diligence in safeguarding and protecting the intellectual property and copyright of Kababi's work. So, the three of us have talked multiple times, but I really want to take this opportunity right now publicly to apologize for my failure here, for not reaching out to you before using this image in our grant announcement and for not crediting you for your work. I also just really want to thank you for your generosity in, wanting to kind of be in ongoing relationship with us and in allowing us to work with you to address this mistake. And now I'd love to stop talking and invite you both to share. So, I want to give you some space to share like what the impact of this was for you, how this landed for you, like how it felt to see this image of your work included in our email and our grant announcement without a credit to you. So I'll turn it over to the two of you to share your thoughts.
I could start say it unfortunately hit us different because sadly we artists get used to it. So especially when it comes to public art, a lot of people will just think of it as a background. They don't consider the fact that somebody put time into creating a piece and and it becomes parts of many things, whether you're watching SVU or there's people use art in landscapes all the time. Seeing that we both had our moment to acknowledge it and think about it. And it's cool for me on the artist end to get to this space now where we're having this conversation and to build. a relationship rather than having a verbal fight over, because that's the other thing we get used to when artists do push back, the person who we're confronting or trying to enlighten about the situation almost kind of gaslights or makes us feel like we should be thankful for the exposure. That's the one thing we get a lot. You know, this is just a good way to get you on the, get people. It's like, okay, I mean, that's what we're always told. So those are kind of the first things that hit. Like, I'll go back to the way I started this. It hit us differently because I get used to it. But then, I have representation that, Amber, she's able to take a breath instead of just boom hitting. So she was able to process it, and then you got the email that you got, and I'll let her take it over from there, how she felt when we witnessed what happened.
From my standpoint, I am a very big truster of my gut person. And so if it hits a certain way, I trust that feeling, but I will still ultimately ask Kababi because he is the artist. It is his artwork. Um, and I want to see how it lands with him. And so that was his exact reaction. Like it happens all the time. And this is just a thing with art. On the other end of that is, I have been in plenty of situations where I have made mistakes, some intended, and where I'm like, I'll do it and I'll ask for permission later and I'll say that I'm sorry. But the bigger need is that I need to do whatever it is that I think I need to do. So I've gone that route. And then there have been some that have been very unintentional and thinking about, just some of the ways that I have been approached when I have made mistakes. And now being at a point in time in my life where I want to, because I've been granted grace in so many instances, that I hope to be that person that's in a position where I can grant grace to other people. And I want to move through the world believing that people don't have malicious intent about a certain thing. And Kababi is right. Like there's always like a lot of pushback and back and forth, and there's a lot of gaslighting a lot of times. But I always have to exercise. It doesn't matter whatever it is, the reaction on the other end. I have to be who it is that I want to be and how I want people to treat me, so to speak. And so that's why I've gotten better at trying to cultivate emails that welcome conversation as opposed of coming from a standpoint of shaking the finger. So I'm very glad that it landed that way with you and your team.
Thank you both so much for sharing that and just yeah, for sharing like kind of all the different sort of thoughts and feelings that would come up, right? The feeling of like you've been here before,
Mhm.
and like, how you think about how you want to approach the conversation. One of the other things we've talked about is like just generally what are the challenges that are facing artists right now. So I wanted to ask you to share some thoughts on that too, like the challenges that you're facing, especially Black artists, as it relates to issues like credit and copyright, and just like the broader landscape too, and like naming too, like how kind of AI is entering into this space as well, the creative space. So just big question. Invite you both to share your reflections on that.
I think that's definitely a big thing that is happening now for artists, is the use of AI, but also um, even in our situation now, like even on a more corporate level, AI makes it complicated because they can put it on AI, but AI itself will copy the styles of artists, and it'd be so close that people can pretty much look at it and say, "That's exactly how I paint. And that's my work." But there's this like gray area where, and also you're dealing with corporations with a budget where they can bankrupt an artist, if you're willing to do that, to go the length to put that fight in. Outside of that, I think it's other stuff is just the usual. Because of where the education system is, you're creating a culture of people that art isn't the first thing on their mind. So that like a lot of things that we're thinking about now, me and Amber, with the businesses, getting companies to think of us in the early stages of a whatever, as opposed to a afterthought. But the way the system and the way the education and the way culture, and way certain groups react to art, those kind of things make sense. Like that kind of attitude is being cultivated, whether people know it or not, they don't even know it. So just try and get um, in a space where people can feel comfortable about being around art and feel like they need to have it in their environment. One, just to enrich themselves, but also to, tell their story. But I mean, I would say that that's probably a main struggle, not to veer too much away from, what we're handling right now. But yeah, that definitely that corporate piece. And it's even smaller scale. People like were prom photos and this, that, and the other. So people are making money using these backgrounds in there, but we won't see those unless somebody posts it on Instagram. And it's like, oh, so we kind of create work on walls in certain areas in St. Louis, knowing it's gonna be wedding photos, and it's so we help photographers because now you got a cool place to, you don't have to look for a backdrop. You can just go down there and you got a million versions of a background at your leisure. So
I think from the business standpoint of art and um what I would like people to know or challenge them in thinking about is that there are people like at the beginning and at the end of the art, and that you're getting a piece of the person in every art piece that you're getting. And it's more than just like these pretty colors or these different colors on a canvas or on a wall. It's so much more than that. And to think about like art has always been the voice of the people from the very beginning. Art, whether it's music, whether it's imagery, whether it's poetry and writing, like that's always been the voice of the people. And so at the very heart of everything that even sells anything in this country is based in art. And what I would hope, because there's so many contracts that come across our desk, and there's one that's in front of me right now that I just read through it yesterday and just like picked apart all of these things. Like you're a major corporation and you're asking this really small business to do this thing at some rates are very small, and artists are working to work with those small rates. But then not only do you want the artwork, you want the rights to it, you want all these things on it because you want to continue to make money over time with it. And I'd like to challenge people to say, if there's an opportunity for there to be future money made, like can you think of ways in which that you can partner with the artists so that everybody wins? Like there are no losers in this. You as a corporation wins, the artist wins, um fields of employment win, communities win. Like to think of it from a standpoint of not just a one-off or a one-on-one kind of thing, but there's always an opportunity to create community, and also just not to box artists into being this one particular thing. Allow artists to create what they create, because again, art is the voice of the people, and artists always challenge people in the way that they see and think about things, and it's a win for everybody.
Thank you for both for that, those reflections. I think what I'm hearing a lot and what you're saying, Amber, is like this idea of like extraction, and how extractive the process often is with artists. Like in these contracts and these agreements, I mean, extraction shows up in our relationships in a lot of ways, but like I think
Mm,
particularly with art, there is like a way of like consumption that is not, to your point, both of you, like really taking into account like the person that is behind it, the person's work that is a part of it. So that's,
absolutely.
yeah. You kind of answered this question, but I'll ask it in case there's something you want to add. Like you address this with us in this really generous way, and I imagine like there's lots of times when you have to write these emails, when you have to reach out to people, when you have to be protective of your work. And like I'm wondering, what comes up for you, and how do you bring that generosity to those conversations? Amber, you talked about like reflecting on like your own mistakes and then trying to show grace. Yeah, just like want to see if there's anything either of you want to add around like how you bring yourselves to those conversations.
I will say two things. One, I'm an Aries to my core. So once, like, if something comes through, all these things, I am going to spew them and say them out loud so I can hear myself say them. And that's the way that I process. And then once I get it out, like I'm done and I can go and I can have a clean slate and how it is that I present to whoever it is. And the other thing is that I love connections with people and things. So I always think that it's an opportunity to connect, and rarely the occasion that it doesn't become an opportunity to connect, because even if it doesn't result in further conversation, I've just formed a connection and I've learned something new about a certain instance and people in the situation.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's just a matter of, Amber said, just practicing, the old adage, treat others the way you want to be treated. Like, we're going to do things too. So how would we want somebody to approach us? It never feels great when somebody just comes in, you know, guns a-blazing. Like, there's an opportunity to connect always, if you're open to it. Like, it doesn't have to be a hit and run. Like, so, and obviously, if a thing is being done, there, you obviously see some value there. So, yeah, if you see some value there, it doesn't have to be just take, take, take like the way that our world is. So I think that all that thinking and, us talking about it, and yeah, just the shows I watch and books I listen to and interviews, everything's about, just wanting people to get along better and that we can all win. So just try to approach and make that the, where we were constantly leaving seeds. I think my career is here based on the way I've either been able to work with or, what I do. So I think even in that, folks are going to have a conversation about our interaction with you. And we'd rather that your team, and even if it had to get, a little feisty, at least it's still done with intention and integrity. But, we'd rather y'all having conversations and putting our name out there that, yeah, they don't like being taken advantage of, but they're also open to having a conversation. They just want to make the world better. And, you know, I think this was great from my end if I could say that, you guys live up to your name in my eyes. Like, yeah, I appreciate that we're even here today.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. I think like well, I'll just say like to kind of share kind of the conclusion of the story too. We got your email, right? We reached out, we arrived at the next steps together. Like I think myself, Amaka, our CEO, both apologized. The things we kind of arrived at together were we published the correction in our next newsletter and on the grant announcement. We also did a retroactive licensing agreement to pay for the use of the image for a limited time on the grant announcement. And then we continue to be in conversation about working together. And ultimately, we ended up collaborating on this design project for Kataly. You created this beautiful design for us for some apparel that we wanted to produce. These sweatshirts that our team loves wearing out and about, all over the
Yes.
bay and all over the place. And we were able to do that really because the two of you were open to being in partnership, right? Like that. Graciousness and like desire for connection were really felt by me and by the team here. You didn't owe us that, of course, and we're still just like really deeply appreciative of the ability to like be in that ongoing relationship. It makes talking about this failure easier that we like have this ongoing relationship, that we are able to have a conversation about it, that we could kind of end in that like relational space. So yeah, just want to appreciate you both and thank you for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Always
for
glad to
having
talk with
us.
you.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.